What is going on, everyone? Welcome back to another episode of the Listen podcast. I had to look for a second. It's been a while. Thank you so much for listening, whether it's Spotify, Apple Music, YouTube, wherever you guys are tuning in. I appreciate you. My guest today is a content creator. She used to be a TikTok and video host for BlogTo and is now the host and video editor for CBC Street Sense. Mercedes, let me get it right, Gaztambide.
You nailed it.
Perfect. I got it. How are you doing?
I'm so good. How are you?
I'm very good. We were talking about this right before, but we have known of each other for a very long time and have technically worked together on a video.
We did.
But we have never met before.
Iconic collab. I think at the end it had like 4 million views or something.
Did it? Really?
Yeah.
I haven't watched it in a very long time.
I like buried that deep in the recesses of my brain.
So for those of you guys wondering what the video was, it was so when I used to do my Toronto Man character, Toronto Man pilot, and you were the flight attendant.
Yep.
I don't even remember what I said.
I think the premise of the video was like there was a trend going around that was like, can somebody on board like translate for who, like, and whatever like accent it was or like language it was.
Yeah.
And this was for like Toronto Mans. And so I was like, oh, could you like explain to the guests on board? And then you would, yeah.
Yeah. So. It's interesting because people still talk to me about that character so often, but I have not done that character in
Why not?
over a year. Honestly, there's a couple reasons. One, the main reason, I just got really tired of doing the character.
Yeah.
I had been able to break it down to a science where I knew what I needed to do with that character in order to get views. I was just not having fun making those videos at all.
That's
I had
fair.
done everything I needed to do with that character. I was ready to move on, and I did. But it's still how a lot of people recognize me. And I feel like I'm getting to the same point now with my Uncle Yusuf character, where I kind of want to pivot again and start to do something new. I don't know what yet, but
I get that. I feel like with any type of content, like you really can get into a routine that it feels good when you're in like the peak of it, and then all of a sudden you're like, I'm so bored.
Yeah,
like I can't do this anymore.
It's just it's dangerous because you get addicted to that feeling of growth. You get addicted to getting tons and tons of views and tons of followers, and you want to ride that, but you don't realize like the effect it's having on you mentally. I didn't realize how bored I was until I really stopped doing the character, and I'm like, wow, I really was done with it. Yeah. But I just wanted more. I wanted more followers. Yeah. I wanted to keep growing. I wanted to hit 1 million and 2 million, 3 million. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But it was, yeah, I'm glad I'm done with that side.
Good for you. Yeah. I'm proud of you for being able to release, because I think that's hard too. Like when you know something is really popular, you're like, well, I have to obviously do it forever now because this is the only thing I'm ever going to be good at.
Exactly.
But that's a horrible like rut to get into. So.
Yeah. So talk to me about BlogTo. So was that your first job like straight out of university?
I was in university.
Okay.
Still. Yeah. I was into my second year. So it was right before COVID happened. And I was a fan of BlogTo. They weren't on TikTok yet, like pretty much at all. I think they had just like saved the username basically. But they were obviously like on Instagram, on Facebook. And I was working for the university at the time, and I was doing content creation for them. And I was kind of like sort of copying actually BlogTo video style at least, by doing these like things to check out in Toronto if you're a student. And like I called it like #tourist. And it was a very like BlogTo style video because that was the type of hosting that I wanted to do. And so my coworker and we got to go to this panel where a bunch of the hosts were talking, a bunch of the BlogTo hosts were talking. And it was great. Like I was riding a high. I was like 19 years old and I was like, just being here is like so much fun. Yeah. And they started talking about TikTok and how they like basically didn't know what to do with TikTok because no one really knew what to do with TikTok at that time. Like there weren't really a lot of brands that were on the app at the time. And I had started an account with a friend of mine, and I had done like this one video that had like randomly blown up of me making mac and cheese, but with beer as the base instead of water.
Okay.
Disgusting. And actually, it was pretty good. I'm not gonna lie. But yeah, so like I think that I sort of had like a little bit of like a stake in TikTok, if that makes sense. So when they started talking about TikTok, my coworker was like, oh, you should like go up to them and see if they need someone to do TikTok for their brand. And I was like, no, like that's a really weird thing to do. Like I'm just too young. Like, they don't, like, I don't have any expertise in this. I'm literally just a student. And literally the next week, they put out a job posting being like
Really?
TikTok content creator. And Chris, my coworker, he sent it to me and he was like, Mercedes, like, come on. Like, if you don't apply for this, like, I'll apply for you. So I literally was like in bed, like doing it on my phone. It was like a Google Sheet submission. I submitted it. And yeah, and then like I got an interview. I met with like the video editor. And I think that at that time, it was so new. It was
Mhm.
so unknown. It was like, December 2019, basically. And they were just kind of like, well, you've had some success on TikTok before, and you're obviously interested in this. You know how to video edit, you know how to film, you know how to be on camera. So, like, try it. Like, be our TikTok host.
Mhm.
And, like, that's how it started.
And so at this time you went to Ryerson, right? Or now TMU?
TMU, yeah.
That's crazy. And just like so while you were, how
While I
long,
was
like
in
from when
school.
you started at BlogTo until you graduated, how much time was in between there?
2.5 years.
Oh, really?
Yeah, because I started like halfway through my second year, and then I pretty much stayed with them until the second half of my fourth year. So I guess it was 2 years.
Okay.
Exactly. Yeah.
And during that time you were in school, were you doing it full time or?
I was not doing it full time.
Okay.
No, I was freelancing, and especially at that time, like, I really had no idea of like how much to charge, and just in general, I feel like that's something that's so taboo in content creation. Even now that like so many people are in it, like people still don't want to talk about how much they get paid, and like that bothers me.
Yeah.
Like, can we not just like set a standard? Because otherwise you end up having people like literally working for free.
No, I completely agree. I remember my first like gig ever was for a weed shop. And I'm not gonna say the name because it was like under the table.
Okay.
But they're like, yeah, we'll give you like $300 to come like film a video. And this was like probably as I was like peaking with the DK character.
Oh no.
And I'm like, man, like I was in the mindset of like I think the problem a lot of like young creators, the issue they make, or not the issue, the problem they make is they like, how do I word it? They value the work based on like how much time it takes them and not the value that they actually bring to the platform, to whatever. So I was basing it off of like $300. It's gonna take me like half an hour to make this video. That's fantastic. But I wasn't thinking like, well, how much value does putting it on my page bring? And I think that's the biggest problem that a lot of people need to learn.
For sure.
And I agree with you. It's taboo, and I don't know why. And it's like if everyone just was open about how much they got paid, everyone would get paid more.
Exactly.
But everyone's just afraid. They don't want to say how much. They're like embarrassed. Maybe they didn't get paid as much as other creators. I don't care at all. Like I'm very open with all my creator friends exactly how much I make. And I just feel like it makes the whole landscape just way easier to maneuver around.
Yeah, we're perpetuating the problem by not talking about it, right? Like we're letting brands take advantage of us, and I think that I found it really difficult to navigate, and I didn't have a manager or anything like that. I didn't have an agent. And like besides the fact that I wanted to work for a company, like it was always my goal to like work for a company like CBC, I think I found it overwhelming to manage myself and have people be like, what's your rate? And I'm like, I don't know.
Yeah.
Like, what do you mean? And for the longest time, like I didn't, like you were saying about like your value as an account, like I wouldn't even charge brands for like cross posting to like TikTok to Instagram, whatever. When meanwhile, like there's a huge number of followers that that content is being presented to, and like that has a lot of value. That's what they're paying for, right? They're not paying for the video.
Yeah.
They're paying for you to make the video.
Exactly. Yeah, I'm the exact same. Before I had an agent, like they were telling me about all these different things that once I got an agent, they were telling me about all these different things I could charge for. And I'm like, wait, what? Like,
yeah.
I'm like, but it doesn't take me any more work to post on TikTok and Instagram compared to just TikTok. But they're like, yeah, but you're putting it out to so many more followers. Like you have to charge for that. Or even like boosting rights. Like, oh, a company wants to boost it for 30 days. I'm like, but that doesn't affect me. I can charge for that. And it's like, yes, you can. Yeah. There's so many things you can charge for that if you don't bring it up, the brand's definitely not going to bring up.
Why would they?
Like, why not just be open about it? Like, talk to all the different creators about it so that you're not getting fleeced.
We need like a Google Sheet or something where we can all just like collate data.
Exactly.
Because even like when you do like look up on TikTok, like how much should I charge for like this brand deal? Like everyone's gonna give you a different response, and it's so big in the U.S. and like there's a whole different set of standards in the U.S. than there is in Canada. And then we don't even talk about ad standards and like disclosing partnerships and that kind of stuff. Like that we don't know any of this. Like the business part is something that I think that I just wish that we all had more access to education on, you
Yeah.
know?
Yeah, I'm thinking with the um ad disclosure, even for me, like my girlfriend and I, we have this food page now where we try out different restaurants, and we're just starting to be invited to like restaurants just to go try out the food, and like everything's paid for and that kind of stuff. And I'm like, oh, like I don't want to lie and say that like we went here and like spent our money. So it's like, oh, we have to disclose that we went to this restaurant, and
Yeah.
it's the rules. I feel like they change all the time, and like you said, like even the States is very different than Canada. It takes some getting used to for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Absolutely. But
Um,
we'll figure it out eventually.
yeah, at some point. So what was it like working for BlogTo? Because I feel like BlogTo is probably the most popular publication, at least for young people in Toronto. So what was it like kind of, at least to me, it seemed being the face of BlogTo, at least their TikTok?
Yeah. Well, yeah, I feel like that happened really quickly because especially at that time with TikTok, there was like 6 months to a year there that you could really rack up followers. Like you had one video that gained 1 million views and like automatically it's like 50K in one night.
Yeah.
And that doesn't really happen anymore just because of the way the algorithm works and
Much harder now.
things have changed for sure, but I think that I don't know if I was prepared for like the clout that came with it. Like even just from a personal standpoint, like it was like when I first started doing it was during COVID. So for like a year, like I wasn't going outside at all. Like I wasn't interacting with anybody. I wasn't getting like recognized in any way because I wasn't actually dealing with people. And then I remember like the first time I went to Shoppers, like after the lockdown had been lifted, the person like the cashier was just like, "Oh my gosh, like don't I know you from somewhere?" And I was like, no. Like, why would you know me? That would be so weird. Did we go to high school together? She's like, from like the BlogTo TikTok. And I was like, oh my God. And like I went home and I was like, this is so crazy. Like someone recognized me. And then like it literally just kept happening. Like it got to the point where summer, maybe 2021, like every other day, there would be somebody that would just be like, hey, oh my gosh, I've seen you on TikTok, BlogTo girl, BlogTo girl, BlogTo. And it literally became like a nickname. And like, it's so weird. Like when you get recognized in public, like, I think it gives you like this false sense of importance where you're like, oh, well, like people know me, like I'm a household name, but you're not. Like it's just something that people are consuming, and I think that it took me like a while to like separate my identity away from being like the BlogTo girl, the TikTok BlogTo girl, and I didn't want to leave because I was like, if I leave this, I'm never gonna have success again. Like this is my peak. This is like the best I'll ever do. But I wasn't happy. Like I wasn't really feeling creatively fulfilled by the end, and I wasn't really making enough money, and I wanted to move on. But I was also like, oh, but like this is giving me like the ego boost and the validation that I need. And I think that made me have to reflect and be like, why am I actually doing this? Like, am I doing this because I want like internet fame, or am I doing this because I went into journalism for a reason and because I care about telling stories that are important? And I think like BlogTo, like I think that they're great at what they do, and I think that they serve a really important role in the media landscape, especially in Toronto, especially for newcomers to Toronto. I mean, even still now, like I will go to BlogTo's page like for new stuff, and like I completely support what they do. But I also was looking for something that was more serious and more educational, and like videos, we would basically turn them around in like an hour. And like that to me, I was just like, oh, I feel like I can dig in here. Like there can be more depth. And so I just knew it was time to go.
Did it bother you, or did you enjoy being like referred to as BlogTo girl?
I feel like it was kind of a mixed, like if it was nuanced for me, because on one hand, I felt very proud of the brand that I had put so much like time and effort and love into building. But then at the same time, it was like, I'm only known for that, like for doing that thing. And now, like I had this kind of moment where I was like, wow, I've been like spending a lot of my time and effort and creativity, like doing something for someone else and not really necessarily getting a lot of like self-return. And I think that's where I started having questions about like, okay, is this type of like, notoriety enough for me to want to keep doing this thing? Or do I have to find other ways of like feeling good about what I do? You know, that's not why I like went to journalism school to like make TikToks that were like funny 10-second lip sync videos, but like it's easy and people consumed it and they loved it. And so like I obviously felt a certain sense of like pride and joy in that, but also I like I don't know. You know, with content, like it just consumes you. Like that high of like hitting that million views or certain number of followers, you're just like, oh, like give me it again. It's like doing drugs,
Yeah.
you
No,
know?
it's 100%. And for me, I felt like it was exactly the same thing. Like, uh, I mean, I started kind of blowing up during lockdown, and then when things started opening up, it was like, oh, you're DK, aren't you? And that was like,
You're like, that's not my
yeah.
name.
I'm like, I don't know how I feel about that. And I think
Yeah.
at first I was okay with it just because I was getting noticed. Like that was
Yeah.
cool, and I'd never experienced that before, just getting noticed by strangers. But then it turned into this thing where I was like, okay, I don't want to be known as DK. Like, oh, why don't these people know my actual name? You know what I mean?
For sure.
And I find it funny that you said when you were in Shoppers, she was like, where do I know you from? I hate that because I get that all the time. Like someone saying, where do I know you from? And I feel like a loser saying, you know me from here.
Right?
So then I'm
Oh
like,
my gosh, I know.
I
I'm like,
don't
maybe
know.
it's from this. I don't know. Do you watch
Yeah.
TikTok ever?
Exactly. It's the worst feeling because I
Yeah.
can't correct them, but then it just turns into this awkward conversation where I know where you know me from, but
Yeah.
I can't tell you where you know me from. It's
Okay,
not
I
fun.
have to know like what was the most awkward interaction you've ever had with someone who recognized you? Because I have one. And it was so bad.
I want to say, funny enough, this was at a Shoppers Drug Mart. This was maybe
It's always
like,
Shoppers Drug Mart.
this was maybe like, honestly, like, I want to say maybe summer of 2021. And I thought I had COVID, so I
Mhm.
went to get a COVID test
Oh,
at
perfect.
Shoppers. And as I'm waiting for the results, I don't know yet if I have COVID or not. This guy like comes up and it's like, in the beginning, I was always getting recognized by just like teenagers, like
Yeah.
kids who were like 12, 13, 14, who
Yeah.
just love the Toronto man accent. And yeah, he was just like, yo, can we take a picture? And I felt weird saying yes because I was like,
You're like, I
I
shouldn't get
might
too
have
close to you.
COVID. And I was with my girlfriend at the time, and he like basically like threw the phone in her face and was like, yeah, take this picture of us. And I'm like, yeah, take the picture. It was nice to meet you. I didn't have COVID, which was great.
Okay.
I would say that was probably the weirdest experience.
If you did though, imagine how bad you would have felt.
Honestly, it is what it is. What about you though? What was it? What's the story?
Okay. This was terrible. Well, not even terrible. I think just like maybe at the age that I was at, like I was like 21,
Okay.
and I went to the Stag Shop,
Mm-hmm.
which if you don't know, in Toronto, it's like the sex shop that's like it's a chain.
Yeah.
And
Franchise.
so yeah, it's a franchise. And so I was in there and like I hadn't really spent a lot of time in sex shops. I was feeling really uncomfortable. I just wanted to like go in, like get my little lube or whatever and like leave. And I'm like checking out at the front and I'm like avoiding eye contact at all costs with everybody in the store. And it's the one at like Yonge and Dundas too. So it's like
Okay.
you
Yeah,
always
yeah.
run the risk
Oh,
of
I
like
know the one you're talking
like
about.
seeing
Yeah,
somebody you know what I mean? And so I'm like checking out and the guy's like, oh yeah, like cash your card, da da da. And then he's like looking at me like
yeah.
this,
Oh,
like squinting his eyes, and I was like, maybe he's like judging what I bought, like I don't really know.
yeah.
He's like, oh my gosh, you're the BlogTo girl, loudly,
Oh.
you're the BlogTo girl, and I was like, no, that
Yeah.
is not me. That was my twin sister, like.
That is rough.
But I felt so awkward, and I was like, oh my god, like, haha, like, yeah, like. But then he just kept on going on. He's like, oh, I love your content. This one video, and he's like specifically talking about stuff. And I was like, can we please just like, can this interaction be over, please? God, I need to leave right now. Please put my stuff in the black bag and like let me get out of the store. It was so nice, but I felt so like awkward.
Side note, I feel like the thing with sex shops, because there's one that is like around the corner from my house, and I never see anyone ever in there, like
Mm.
never. And I thought to myself, how do these places survive? And my two conclusions were, one, they're like a front for some like something else, some going on in the back, or two, like everyone does online sex shop ordering so that they
Yeah.
don't have those kinds of experiences.
True, or you like run in and out so quickly. Like it's not the type of place you go in and browse.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're not like,
I
hey
agree.
babe, like come over here and like check out the dildos. Like
That's a good
it's not
point.
that. Like you know what you want and then you leave.
As you were saying that story, I thought of one more, I guess, kind of awkward encounter. This was about like maybe not even a year ago. My mom and sister were going to a wedding, and last minute my sister couldn't make it. And my mom calls me and she's like begging me to come to this wedding.
Okay.
And I'm not like, I don't really know the bride or groom. I'm not really interested. I know it's going to run late 'cause it's a Middle Eastern wedding. And I told her, I'm like, I'm not interested. And she's like begging me. So I'm like, okay, I'll come. I go, and I have never been recognized so much in my life.
Oh,
I guess I had
no.
never been up until that point in a room full of Arabs since
Yeah.
starting my Uncle Yusuf character. And the amount of people coming up to me for like business propositions
Inquiries?
and
Oh,
inquiries and
dear.
offers, it was so rough because they all think that like one, that like we're family, so like I'm gonna
Right.
give them some crazy deal, and two, they think like we can make all this happen under the table without my agent. Like one person was like, "Yeah, like just don't tell your agent, we'll do it," and I'm like, They're gonna see the ad. Like, how am I supposed to do this without my agent?"
Yeah.
Like, no, 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 don't worry, they don't need their cut. And I'm like, no, they need their like. This is how it works. And it was just so awkward having to like tell people who I kind of view as like aunts and uncles, not by blood, but like them being like me being around them ever since I was a kid, just having to tell them like no, and I can't work with you, and that's not how these things
Yeah.
work. That was pretty awkward.
It's definitely a weird job
Hmm.
because it's not people don't have the same boundaries with you that they do with like if you're like an accountant, like
Yeah,
I don't know. It's just yeah. People are like, "Oh, can you just like promote this and this and this for me and like post this on your Instagram story and do this and do this?" And I'm like, I don't know. Like I
yeah,
have to think about it. Like this is my job. This is my work. I
exactly.
can't just like randomly do
Yeah, they
things.
don't understand that. They're like, oh, you just do me a favor. Like, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, and, like, sometimes it literally is not a big deal, and, like, it's a friend or family that I'm like, "Yeah, like, for sure." But then other requests, I'm like, I don't know if I feel comfortable doing this, and now I feel really bad telling you no."
Yeah, exactly. Um, so okay, fast forward now. So now you work with CDC Street Sense.
Yeah.
And for those of you who aren't following, follow them on, what is it, TikTok, everywhere, just
TikTok,
everywhere.
Instagram, YouTube.
I'm a very big fan, and I think because our generation especially, I feel, was not taught how to be financially literate
No,
at
not
all.
at
Like
all.
I was going through the page today, just kind of looking at different videos, and I'm like, I did not learn any of this in high school. And the amount of nonsense I learned in high school that like
Mhm.
I have not used since the day I graduated, it's crazy because like everyone kind of in our generation has to just learn on their own, like how to file their taxes,
Mhm.
how to buy a home, like
Yeah,
how to do all these things. They do not understand it. So I think it's you guys
exactly.
fill a need that is very big, especially for like the younger generation.
Well, thank you. I agree. I'm always like I've never in my life needed to use the Pythagorean
Yeah.
theorem, but like it would have been nice if someone told me what a mortgage
Yeah,
was. That would have
exactly.
been great, like maybe it would have saved me from a lot of like even just like student debt.
Mhm.
Like we're not taught about loans and interest and taxes and or anything like anything to do with money and I think it's like sinister
Mhm.
in a way because it sets us up to just have to figure it out as we go and
Yeah.
then make all those mistakes that ultimately make people really rich and us be in more debt and be in more trouble and I think like that's why I find it sinister. Like I don't know, maybe this is like my conspiracy like tinfoil hat coming on, but like why don't we learn more about our money
Yeah.
and how to manage ourselves? It's weird.
It's honestly, I agree. I think sinister is the perfect word. Like, it's kind of evil, the fact that, like, let's just take school, like student debt, for example. You are expecting an 17 or 18-year-old
Mhm.
to make a decision that could cost them well over $100,000. And if you go in the States, school's even more
Yeah.
expensive. Like, immediately putting them that by the age they're in, that by the time they are age 21, 22, they are in like $100,000 worth of student debt. That is incredibly difficult to pay off, that has interest on it, and like nobody understands it, especially now. Like, everyone seems to think that, like, not saying university or college isn't important, but I think personally, more and more it's becoming less important unless you're talking about like the big, like lawyer, engineer,
Mm.
doctor. I feel like a lot of other jobs you don't really need it anymore.
Well, like
It depends, but
a lot of people don't even use the degrees that they get, and then they end up doing another random job, and like maybe yeah, their bachelor's did help them get from like I don't know, like environmental studies to like something in business,
mhm,
but like probably not. Like
exactly.
for the most part, it's about who you know, and I think that's something that I've like really learned over the years is that like it doesn't like literally, and I was the biggest like teacher's pet in school and I would try so hard. Anyone who went to school with me will know like I was always that person. I was like, raising my hand for every single question because for some reason I thought it would like help me in the long run and like it didn't.
Hmm.
Like it was all about all the connections that you make behind the scenes and the different types of work that you do when you're in school. Like so many people who I know who I went to school with, like, were like, I'm not gonna work while I'm in school just because like school is my work and like this is my focus, which like I get. Like it's a lot, it's stressful. But then they didn't work at all through school, made no, like
Connections.
professional
Yeah.
connections, and then got to the end and then they were like, well, now what? Like, it's
Mhm.
not like when you graduate, they like hand you on a silver platter, like, here's your first job offer. It doesn't work like
Yeah.
that. You have to grind so hard, and like sometimes it takes people years after school to find their first job. And again, like it might not even be related to what you studied. So yeah, I don't know. I think that there's not it's not like misinformation, but it's like a lack of information
Exactly.
about money and about just like being an adult in general
Mhm.
and like just like living and thinking and about money smartly. And I think that that's what I like about Street Sense. Like even though I've been doing it for 3 years now, and like sometimes like we said with content, like it can become routine and monotonous. Like I do feel so much satisfaction knowing that even if just like one kid is like, huh, okay, like maybe I will look at my T4,
Mhm.
the next time I like whatever, get my pay stub. Like that's a good feeling, you know?
Yeah. I think, like you said, we don't like so many people don't know these things growing up. And so I guess my question for you is, did you have to kind of teach yourself some things like through this whole like working at Street Sense? Like, did you have to become financially literate, or did you already kind of
Mm.
have a good understanding of like the financial world and like student debt and mortgages and this and that?
I feel like I actually knew a lot going in just because it was just the way that I was raised, and it was the pressures that I had from my own family. And like I don't know, I had OSAP
Hmm.
like going through school, and I had student loans going through school, and it was important. Like my parents taught me that it was important to be able to sustain myself, and if there was something that I wanted to do, then like I should be able to do that for myself and figure it out. And like they would support me where they could,
Hmm.
but it was also like it should be my responsibility. And I always took that really seriously. And like even maybe it's also like oldest daughter syndrome, but like I started working when I was like 11 or 12 years old,
Really?
babysitting. Yeah, I just like I loved the idea of like having independence, having my own money, and just not having to rely like on other people, not having to, I was like I would feel so guilty, like, when people would pay for things for me or when
Hmm.
I would get gifts, I would just be like, "I know someone spent money on that they worked really hard for, and, like, I'm not what if I don't enjoy it enough to the point where it's worth it," you
Hmm.
know? And I didn't wanna have that, like, guilt on me anymore, and, yeah, and then I kinda, like I think also earning money can be addictive, and it's why, like, wealthy people, like, can be so, what's the word?
Greedy?
Greedy.
Yeah.
Yeah, or, like, exploitative. Because, yeah, I think that it's something that you really can get addicted to. But, yeah, so I think I had, like, a pretty good knowledge of, like, saving
Hmm.
and, like, getting jobs and what was important on, like, resumes and that kinda stuff. I had filed my own taxes by that point already for a couple of years. But I do learn new things, like, literally all the time.
Yeah.
Like, I just did a video on it was, like, all the things that go into buying a house that
I
aren't
saw that
just
one. I
yeah.
was like, I'm learning.
Yeah, and because it's something that, like, I'm not gonna buy a house, like, next year or anything like that, but, like, I didn't know about, for example, like, mortgage insurance.
Hmm.
I didn't know that
I
that
didn't know
was
that was a
that that
thing.
was a thing, yeah, but, like, depending on, the down like, the sorry, like, the what do you call it? The down
Down
payment that
payment,
you
yeah.
put down, like, it can be really important to have something like mortgage insurance, and interest rates and, like so anyways, there's a lot that I am learning on the job, but I think that it's, like, it's natural to me because it's important to me,
Hmm.
you know?
What do you think is the biggest thing that, maybe not a misconception, but something that people in like their 20s, most people don't know that they probably should know?
About money?
Yeah. Like, what do you think is the most important thing?
Ooh, how much is getting taken off your paycheck?
Like taxes?
Yeah, like, whatever a company quotes you of, like, what you're making, you're making it, like, at least, like, 30%
Yeah.
less than that, and, like, don't quote me on that specific number, but, like, I remember for the first time, like, looking at my pay stub and being like, "Wow, okay, like, this much goes to my benefits, and this much goes to the Ontario
Mm.
tax, and this much goes to the federal tax, and this much goes to union dues," and before I knew it, I was like, "Whoa, like, if I wasn't getting all these taxes deducted, I'd be making, like, almost twice as much," but obviously, like, we know that we have to pay taxes, so, like, that's all normal
But
and
Ontario's
good.
taxes are crazy,
It's
but
crazy. Well,
yes.
Canada's taxes
Yeah.
in general, but, like, I think that it's good to know. It's good to be aware of, like, how much is being taken off and for what
Mhm.
purposes, because it also informs a lot of other things in your life too. It can inform, like, even your political decisions,
Yeah.
right? Of, like, are people talking about, like, lowering or raising income tax? And, like, against who? And, like, against what tax bracket? And
Mhm.
even when you're doing your taxes, like, you know, what can you actually be taxed on versus what can't you, and deductibles and all these different kinds of things. Like, I think it's just good to like actually know how much you're making and like why.
Yeah. I think as I've gotten older, finances have become more and more important to me when it comes to political candidates and stuff like that. Like
Yeah.
it's like, oh, money is, as much as people don't want to say, like, it's important. It is very important. And for me, especially the last couple of years since I've kind of become like, I own a business and I run it myself, self-employed. Before that, I would just file my own taxes and it was very simple. And now it's way more complicated.
Yeah.
And I, for the most part, don't get taxed throughout the year. And I have to file my tax at the end. And then I get taxed a bunch. And it's like, okay, like I was used to whatever money went into my account, I've already been taxed. This is my money. And now it's like, oh no, every time I get paid, I need to put away like a big chunk of that so that when April comes around, I'm not getting like destroyed from taxes.
Yeah, exactly. Because if you've spent all that money that you've earned, like how are you going to pay those taxes back? And then you'll start earning, and then there's interest on those taxes. And yeah, so especially for freelancers, it's like really important to understand.
I've had to hire someone to kind of teach me these things, which has been a good investment, I'll be honest. But I want to get back to, being able to do it myself. But for now, I'll keep that.
Another thing that I will say that I think people in their 20s should know is there actually are a lot of ways that you can save money and like earn even more money without just having it be like a savings or a checking account. Like, I think that we're sort of told the bare minimum basics of like have a checking account and then have a savings account. And, your bank actually offers a high interest savings account, which gives 1.4% interest, that's pretty good, but it's not that good. Like, it's pretty small and you end up actually losing money over time. Like, the value of your dollar, like, actually just diminishes every single day because of interest rates. So if you can get something like a TFSA, or they just actually implemented a FHSA, first time home buyer savings account, good for you. That's something that, and it's actually tax deductible as well. So like when I did my taxes this year, like that got taken off of my like income tax or like my taxable income. So yeah, I think that I wish that more people knew about that, because there are ways that you can make the most of your money. Not a lot, but some.
No, I agree. For me, I mean, for as long as I remember, I've had just a checkings and a savings account, and like I have my TFSAs, and I just opened the FHSA. But like a couple of weeks ago, I was like, oh, like Wealth Simple has like an account that gives you like 4% interest. Like, why not just put the money? I mean, it's not as good as maybe like investing or whatever, but why not putting the money that I have in like my savings into this account? So at least I'm making 4% on. It's not bad at all.
It's a safe way of doing it. Well, nothing is ever like truly 100% safe, but like it's a if you're not interested in like having stocks and like, day trading and managing all of that, but you also want to make like a little bit more than what your bank is saying, like we have the highest high interest savings rates on our savings, like don't believe what your bank says. It's almost never a good idea. I have a financial advisor, and like literally I think his fee is like $50 a year, and it has really like completely changed my life.
At like a bank or like?
No, it's at like another, actually the institution is called Edward Jones.
Okay.
But like I have an individual advisor within Edward Jones, and yeah, my mom set me up with him when I was 18 years old.
Awesome.
She was like, she's like, here, just like talk to him, see if there's like a certain amount you can put aside each month. And at the time, like it felt like a big deal. Like I was like, oh, I don't want to like have $200 or $300 less than I normally would. But also I was like, if I'm not spending it on this, like it just feels like it's in my account, and then I'm like, oh, I can like go buy coffee now, or I can go like out to dinner. But like as soon as that money started leaving my account, you just get used to not having it. It feels like a bill. And then all of a sudden I woke up 5 years later, and then I was like, whoa, like I would not have this in savings if I had not done this when I was 18. And like it's never too late to start, like even if you're 32 and you've never heard of a TFSA, I don't care. Like open one today.
You have a lot of contribution room if you're 32.
You have so much room.
Yeah, I agree. I feel like for me, especially the last like couple of years, I've kind of been in this mode where I'm like, I would prefer not to work until I'm 65 or like, have to wait for like I'm trying to retire as early as possible. So I try to put as much money as possible into like TFSAs and just like investments and stuff like that. But even that is like, you kind of have to learn. Like I had to learn the stock market the hard way. I maybe shouldn't have done it that way, but I just kind of threw myself in there, lost a decent amount of money. But now I understand much better. And now I'm like, oh, I don't really invest in too many individual stocks. I invest in like ETFs now just because like I can't keep up with who the CEO is and who's what voting on this. And I'm like, let me
No.
just give me like the 500 best companies and I'll just
Yeah.
invest in that.
There's people who literally like it is their job and it's not just their 9 to 5 job, it's their round the clock job.
Mhm.
And so like I don't know. I know that some people do have the capacity for it, but me, like I like working with somebody and like you
Mhm.
said, it's an investment to have somebody who can advise you on those things, who is looking at all those small details. And like sometimes he explains stuff to me on the phone and I'm just like nodding. I'm like, oh, cool, sounds good. Whatever you say, bro. Apple for sure.
Yeah.
Like you know, and I trust him, and and it's worked out. And you know, there's dips and there's raises, but you just gotta you can't be scared, right?
Yeah.
Like you have to see it as like a long-term investment. And the older I get, the more I think about my future and the things that I want to do. And, you know, it feels less important to be like, I want an extra $100 so I can like go to this concert.
Mhm.
And more important to be like, what if I like actually want to buy a house one day? Like,
Yeah.
I know that no one in Toronto thinks that they're ever going to be able to buy a house, which like it's probably pretty true. But like, I would like to be optimistic about the fact that like maybe I will own property one day and I won't be renting forever.
Yeah. Honestly, it makes me sad because I feel like, especially over the last year, so many of my friends have come to me and they're like, oh, yeah, like I've given up. Like,
Yeah,
I'm
same.
just going to rent. And I'm like,
Same. Like
I
60% of
get
my
it.
friend group, I swear, they're like, it's never going to happen. So why would I try?
hmm I mean, yeah, I'm like, we're renting now and we're probably going to be renting for a little while, but I'm like, just want to keep saving, keep saving. Maybe we can get to that point one day. Who knows what interest rates and just prices of like, it feels like everything's just continuously going up,
Yeah.
but you know, eventually, hopefully, maybe it'll go down.
I think you just have to like this is the world that we live in, and like if you surrender yourself to the way that things are, like of course you'll never reach that goal. You know
Yeah,
what I mean? It's not just gonna like fall into your lap. So
exactly.
like you have to work for it to a certain extent,
Yeah.
right?
So speaking of things costing a lot of money,
Yeah.
how do you like living in Toronto?
Well, now that we've talked about how expensive it is, I'm like rethinking it. But also like a lot of places are expensive nowadays.
Yeah.
But no, like I think like I wasn't born in Toronto. I was
Okay.
born in Boston.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, I was born in Boston. That's where my parents met, and then we moved to Toronto in 2005, I
Mhm.
believe, or 2006. Truthfully, I don't know. Ask my mom. But yeah, so I've literally lived here my entire life. I still feel like I still call Boston in the U.S. like home in a way, especially because I still have like a lot of family there. But like I was raised like riding the TTC and like having a 416 home phone number and like you know what I mean? Like every single one of my first jobs, first friends, first boyfriends, girlfriends, like has all been here. And I think that when I went into university and I met a lot of people from other provinces and they'd be like, oh yeah, like I'm in Toronto because it's like super fun. It's like a big city, but like I'm gonna like raise my family like, you know, back home, like where I'm from. And I'd be like, why does no one see this as like a residential place?
Mhm.
Because I grew up in the residential area of Toronto, you know, like not the suburbs of Toronto, but like East End Toronto,
Yeah.
where like, I don't know, like your street is literally entirely made up of like just families,
Yeah.
just like kids your age. And like there's nothing intense and high city about it. Like Toronto obviously does have that to it, but I also think people really overlook like the beautiful residential aspects of Toronto. So like I've always imagined raising my family here and being here for the rest of my life, honestly.
Yeah.
I love traveling, but like I don't think I could ever really call another place like home.
Yeah. That's something I've been struggling with lately because I was born in Scarborough. I lived in Ajax my whole life until moving to Toronto like a couple of years ago. And my entire life, I've been like, I'm going to live in the GTA
Mm-hmm.
for the rest of my life because I love Toronto. I love the GTA. I'm a suburbs kid, so I'd probably be somewhere in the suburbs, but still in the GTA. But just over the last like year, I'm like, man, things are so expensive. And
Yeah.
it is true that like a lot of different places are expensive, but there are some places that aren't that expensive. And I'm
Yeah.
someone that like, I don't mind kind of going to the middle of nowhere, not too far middle of nowhere, but
Mm.
like having a lot of land and like kind of getting off the grid a little bit. So like that kind of idea has just been in my head a little bit, but the
Swimming.
dream is like to stay in Toronto my whole life, or at least in the GTA. It's tough with how expensive it is.
Yeah, I definitely agree. I feel like maybe it's just like when you're exposed to something for so long, it becomes
The norm.
normal to the point where I don't know, it's like how slowly over time like you've heard of like the frog in the water theory where like if you drop a frog into a pot of boiling water, it's gonna like instantly jump out.
Okay.
But if you put it into a pot of cold water and slowly bring the temperature of the water up, it won't even realize that the water is boiling.
Gotcha.
And then the frog's dead.
Yeah.
And so, like, maybe I'm the frog.
Yeah, is that what you're saying? Living in Toronto until you're like broke.
Yeah, exactly. But it's just like it becomes normal, and like, and also like then you have to think about the emotional component too. Like my whole immediate family is here, and all of my extended family doesn't live in Canada at all. Like they all live in the U.S. They live in Puerto Rico, and so I've gotten I have such a tight bond with just my parents and my sibling and like my partner and my best friends, and like everything that I know is here. And I think growing up, like coming from Boston to Toronto, it made it so that I didn't have a lot of family to hang out with besides my own parents, and I want that for my future kids. Like I want, when I have kids, for like them to have their grandparents down the street.
Yeah.
Because I didn't get that experience.
Yeah.
And I feel like I missed out on like so many great years with my grandparents, with my mom's side of the family, who I loved so much, but it's just because we just couldn't see each other, you know? And so I want that for my kids. I want them to feel like they can just like, they don't have to always call me or their dad. They can just be like, hey, like Auntie Cass, like, can I come over? Like mom's bothering me. Like, you know, I want that for them.
Yeah. I feel like I'm in the exact same boat because especially with my parents, like I know how important it is to them to have grandkids. And like they tell me my mom probably on a weekly basis asks me, one, when I'm going to propose, two, when I'm going to give her grandchildren.
Okay. So when are you going to propose?
Soonish.
Well, wedding rings are also very expensive.
Yes, they are. I don't know about you. I see some of these lab diamonds and they sound good to me.
I mean, okay, first of all, like there's so much wrong with like actual diamond extraction.
Absolutely.
Like they have, you got blood on your hands if you're getting a real diamond.
1000%.
So no real diamonds for me.
What do you think about those, what are they, moissanite? That's like basically the exact same thing, but it's not a diamond.
I don't know. I feel like it's like, it's not necessarily like the look of it or anything like that. It's more just like the symbolism behind it, like diamond, it being like hard as rock or like the hardest substance or something like that. That's like impossible to break. And like, I don't know, like I feel like maybe I'm just someone that like cares about that symbology behind it. But for me, like it wouldn't even have to be a diamond. Like it could be like a ruby or an emerald or like another type of stone that was like important to my partner and I.
Yeah.
But like for some reason, the idea of moissanite, I'm just like, what is moissanite?
No, it's fair. I had never heard about it until like maybe like 2 years ago. I'll go with a lab grown diamond, just you know, to keep it cheaper and ethical. So why not? But yeah, it's like every time I think about the possibility of moving away, I tell myself I cannot take the opportunity of being grandparents away from my parents.
Yeah.
I cannot take that away from them. And it would probably be really hard for me to find friends. Like I love all of my friends. Like I have such a tightly knit friend group and it would be very difficult for me to just move away to like a different country. Yeah. But the thought has crossed my mind. Yeah. Do you still have your U.S. citizenship?
I do.
Do you just keep, like, because you said you were born there, do you just keep it forever if you're born there? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, you do have to like pay U.S. taxes and stuff. So like there's certain, you know, things that you have to do. And like my U.S. passport, I have to renew the same way that I have to renew my Canadian passport. But I don't know. I feel like as long as it's not like a detriment to me, there's nothing wrong with having it. And like if, for example, I ever wanted to like work in the U.S., like even if it was just a short stint, it makes it instantly easier. And like especially at this point in my career where like, you know, I'm happy at CBC, I'm happy in Canada, but like I don't know if Good Morning America was like, hey Mercedes, like want to come be a morning anchor? Like it would be so much easier for me to be like, yes, and I'm a U.S. citizen. You don't have to get my visa, you don't have to do nothing. Like, you know what I mean? So I'm still like, I think like when I'm at this point in my career, like why would I do something that could like potentially make my life more difficult? For sure.
So you say you're very happy right now doing what you're doing. What would you said Good Morning America? What would be like the dream, like the dream job?
Dream job. Honestly, like this is like really shooting for the stars here. But like I think sometimes you just have to say things and like
manifest
put them in the world. But like I would love to have my own talk show one day. I think like I grew up watching Oprah and Ellen. You know, maybe Ellen has. We know
she had her time though.
She had her moment. She had her moment. But I think like just to have a space where people can feel like their stories are being heard. Like there's something that I've learned like since being a journalist, since interviewing people, and it's that people just want to be heard. They just want to say their piece. They just want to tell you their story
Mhm.
and feel like they matter, you know? And I think that that's one of the things that I value most about being a journalist and like being a storyteller is like getting to put a microphone in front of somebody's face, maybe for the first time ever, and like getting to see that spark of like, oh my God, like the spotlight's on me, you know? And so if ever I can make someone feel like that, like truly feel important and heard, that is what I want to achieve
Yeah.
in this life. And so I think to have something like a talk show where, you know, I get to also curate like who's there and what we're talking about and topics and anyways, yeah. I would like that. I would
Have
like
you ever
that for
thought about doing a
myself.
podcast?
I have thought about doing a podcast. I think that like if I were gonna do a podcast, I would want to like put everything into it. And like
Mm.
right now with work, like I work 9 to 5, Monday to Friday. And I also try to balance like my personal life and my friends and my boyfriend and I just got a cat and you know and like my family. And so I think it would be I wouldn't be doing myself justice
Mm.
to kind of half-ass something.
Fair
And like
enough.
I've tried to do a couple of things here and there in terms of like, you know, I did this one show. This was actually before I worked at CBC, but it was called like Half-Baked Ideas. And it was
On your
it was
YouTube, right?
yeah, it was a YouTube segment where I like talked about a topic and I also baked something at the same time. And it was fun, like don't get me wrong, but like after a while I was like, okay, this is like hard to like maintain an upload schedule and do this on my own and like edit my own videos and boom, then blah, 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 blah. And so I think I was just like, I want to do this when I have like my schedule free and open to be able to do what I want to do when I want to do it.
Mm.
And right now I really care about my job a lot and I want to like give it everything. And I think if I were to start doing my own thing and put everything into that, something else would suffer.
Yeah.
And I just can't do that. Like I'm way too hard on myself
Yeah.
for that.
I think that's good though. I feel like a lot of people would just stretch themselves too thin and then get burnt out and not be able to perform their best in any of those avenues, any of those areas because they are doing way too many things at once.
Yeah. I've also learned that like I don't love working for myself. Like
Mm.
I'm not the best at like holding myself accountable. Like if I give myself like a deadline, I'm kind of just like, well, the boss won't mind, you know what I mean? Versus like if I'm working for someone else, like I feel like this like extreme sense of guilt if I'm not doing something that I'm supposed to be doing. So I think really what my goal would be is like to keep on working at a place like CBC. I do like working for CBC because I
Mhm.
think like for some reason working for the public broadcaster and like knowing that like part of my salary is being paid by tax dollars, which means that I have a responsibility. Like I have a fiduciary responsibility to the people of Canada to like make content that is good and like
Yeah.
important to them and serves them. And so I think like if I could just keep on working for a place like CBC and then eventually just get to the point where they're like, you take the reins. Like we trust you. You've been doing this for a long time and like here's your network spotlight moment. Try it out for 3 months and let's see what happens. Like it could be radio, it could be TV, it could be social media. Like I don't know. But I think like right now I just want to keep on like shaking hands
Yeah.
and trying
No,
to
that's
work my
good.
way up.
It's good that you hold yourself accountable. I would say that's for like me, someone who's self-employed, that is the biggest
Yeah,
struggle
it's
is
tough.
holding myself accountable, especially because I'm self-employed. I make my own schedule. So if I want to travel, I can go travel and I go on this trip and that trip. And it's like, oh, I'll get to it when I get back from my trip. And then you get back from a trip and then you're not in the mood to do it. And it takes you a while to get into it. So I totally get where you're coming from. I wanted to ask you, do you feel any kind of pressure or just like how do you feel in general with like constantly kind of having your face on social media and kind of being, I guess with
Mm.
Street Sense, one of the faces of like the product? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it has its like good days and bad days for sure. Because I think that I grew up doing theater, so I grew up like literally a theater kid, like that nerdy weird theater kid that was like singing in the hallway. But you know, like it was me. Like I loved performing for other people. I loved entertaining people. I liked making people laugh. And like you know, like you get a high from like truly entertaining someone and
Absolutely.
capturing someone's attention. And so I think that like that for me has always been second nature. And it wasn't even really something that I was thinking about doing when I went into journalism school. But then when I started doing it, I was like, oh, this is it. Like I'm going to be on camera. This is going to be my career for like however long I can make it work. So I think I really, really like, I love it. I truly like I feel like euphoric when
Yeah.
I'm on a studio set. It's like magic. It's like something comes to life in me. But it's also exhausting. Like performing all the time, like I'm not like this when I'm at home. Like I am, like I'm me, obviously, but I'm not, talking a mile a minute and like thinking about smiling and thinking about how I sound and what I'm saying and especially when it's like scripted content too, it's like delivering it in this very specific way. And if you're doing a skit, it's like acting. It's like, making it funny and making it interesting and making character choices and like all of those things. Like it is tiring. It's tiring just like any other job. And with performing, like you can't really slack off. Otherwise people know, Like I think it's only happened to me once where I was having a really bad day, to be fair. And I filmed a video and my boss, I sent it to her and she was like, Mercedes, like this never happened before, but like your energy just seems weird. Like it just seems off. I don't know what's going on. Like, would you mind like refilming it like tomorrow when you're kind of in a better headspace? And she was right. Like I watched the video back, especially like the next day, and I was like, wow, like I wasn't myself. Like I wasn't, because I was being affected by something. But when you're on camera, like you can't, it's hard because things do still affect you, but like it's almost like you can't let people know, And so I think like I have this back and forth with it where it's like I love it, but I know I won't be able to do it forever because it's draining.
Yeah. Is there any part of you that ever wants to kind of like shut it all off, like kind of disappear from social media?
Yeah. Regularly, but it doesn't last long because then I kind of go through this like roundabout where I'm like, social media is stupid and I just want to like erase myself from the internet and like become an author and change my name and just say goodbye to the world. Like I literally think about this like once a month.
I'm with you.
But then other times I'm like, oh, but like this is kind of my gift, It's like getting to relate to people and it's being vulnerable and putting yourself out there every day. Like, it's scary. And like when you get negative comments, whether they're hateful or whether they're just shitty comments, like it tears you down. But also when you know that you've like touched people's lives and when people come up to you and say like, oh my gosh, I saw this and it inspired me. I went and read this book or I went and made this recipe or, oh my gosh, you talked about this topic and it actually made me realize like that I needed to talk to my partner about how I'm bisexual and I needed to open up to them. And I was like, yes, yes, like that is the goal, And I think like not everyone is like willing to do that, which is fair. Like everybody has different, reasons for being in the world. And I think this is just mine.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. For me, it's like it's highs and lows. There's days where I'm like that and I'm like, oh, this is so amazing. I get these comments or DMs and I'm like, oh, like I really like, I don't want to say change someone's life, but really helped someone like help them have a better day or something like that. And then there's days where I'm like, maybe I should just delete this and like just go ghost. Like forget social media because like I've gone on many like social media breaks before, just like mental health breaks. And like a lot of the times I'm like, oh, I think I'm a little bit happier not consuming all this content. But then sometimes I miss it and it's like you said, it really depends on the day. But overall, social media is a gift. There are so many good parts to it. Just like anything, with the good comes a lot of bad as well.
Yeah, nothing can ever be perfect. And I think you just have to like decide like whether or not like the good outweighs the bad. And I don't know, just like with anything else, if you wake up one day and you're like, you know what, the good does not outweigh the bad, I'm okay with that. I'm okay with just being like, all right, today was my last day on social media. Goodbye, everybody.
No, it's true. Like
I'm cool with that.
I've had that thought before where I'm like, yeah, like I think if the day comes where I'm like, I don't want to do social media anymore, I think I will happily accept that day and have no problem going to find like a quote unquote real job and like
a different job.
Yeah, I don't think I'm gonna be sad when that day comes. I feel like I'll know and I'll have, the journey will have been over in that aspect and I will start a new journey and I think I'll be excited for that.
I feel like we're like people like to, and this is just part of the society we live in, we like to like box ourselves in into like, this is the only thing that I am capable of doing and anything else that I try to do I will be bad at or I'm not going to enjoy or like whatever, or even just like our identity and the way that we view ourselves. And that's just not like, that's not a good like accurate representation of like what it's like to be human. Like there's a reason why like when you check off personality quizzes, like you have so many different areas that you relate to, or like
Yeah.
why you can relate to so many different like astrological signs, you know, like we're multifaceted beings. And like I remember like when I used to do acting and my mom was like, the second that this is not fun anymore, tell me and we're done. Like no pressure. I want this to be fun for you. Make the little money while you can and da-da-da. I remember one day we came back from an audition and it wasn't even because the audition went bad. Like it went well. And I was like, you know what? I'm not really having fun with this anymore. I kind of wish I was like in a classroom right now and not skipping school to do this audition. And she was like, okay, done.
Yeah.
And that was it. And then I moved into journalism and found something even that I liked even more, you know? And so I think like sometimes we box ourselves in, but you just have to accept like if you're done with something, you're done, you know?
Yeah, and I feel like especially like this age, it's so important not to box yourself in because like I feel like I'm 26 right now and I feel like so many of my friends and just the people around me are in such different parts of their lives. Like in your 20s, like I have friends who are single. I have friends who are like basically married. I have friends who live at home with their parents. I have friends who have a mortgage. I have friends who are just working like a part-time job. And I have friends who have found like their forever job. And it's like there's like, especially in your 20s, there's such a broad spectrum of like, there's no like you should be here at this age. Like no, you could be anywhere and you will be okay.
Yeah, I love the fig tree analogy. Have you ever heard of it?
I haven't.
The bell jar, Sylvia Plath.
You're teaching me a lot. The frog one I didn't hear, now this one.
I love an analogy. One thing about me, I love a metaphor. But it's basically this it's this analogy of the fig tree, which is that there's this tree in front of you and there's all these beautiful ripe figs, and the figs represent all the different things you could do with your life. It could be like I could be like an acrobat, I could be a flight attendant, I could be the president of the United States, I could be an author, I could do this, I could do this. And it's overwhelming how many options you feel like you have to choose from. And so then you don't pick because you're just like, maybe that one, maybe that one, maybe that one. But really, like, it's just what's holding you back from having an experience that will be great. Like, every single fig is juicy and worthy and a great option. And if you don't pick one, they're just going to rot. They're just going to sit there and you're just going to be sitting under that tree, just like deciding what to do. And so all you have to do is just pick one.
Yeah.
And then if you don't like it, like, okay, get another one. Like what? We don't know what we're here to do on this earth for. If you wanted to do every single job in the world, like, try. Do it. I dare you.
I like that. That's a good analogy. Before I let you go, I had one last question for you. In September, you went to Egypt.
Yeah.
I'm Egyptian. I want to know your thoughts.
You are? I didn't know that. Okay.
I'm half Egyptian. And you can be 1,000% honest.
Okay.
I was born in Canada, so I no offense will be taken. And I know Egyptian people can typically be very pushy. So I just want to know, what were your thoughts on Egypt?
I really liked Egypt, actually. Yeah. Like, when I think of the places that I've visited, it is the most memorable place that I've visited. And it was actually like my first solo trip as well. And it was kind of at a random time when like none of my friends could really travel. And like I had some time and I had some money and I was like, where should I go? And I had a friend from university who lives in Cairo. And I was like, what if I like came to Egypt? And she was like, really? And I was like, yeah, like for 2 weeks. And she was like, sure, like of course. And so it was really like interesting to like plan that also all by myself. And, you know, like, I don't know. Like I remember I was booking a trip to Luxor, and so it was through like a travel agent and whatever, and they had to do like the international money transfer like through oh my God, what's the company?
Western Union?
Yeah, Western Union.
Yeah.
And she like sent me like her passport and all the stuff, and I was just like, this is weird.
Yeah.
Like, but it was not, you know, my usual experience of booking stuff like in Canada. So it was like having this trust of just being like, okay, like everything's gonna turn out fine. And it was like me going to Luxor was the best experience.
Really?
Yeah. I also have like a crippling fear of heights. And I decided to do a hot air balloon ride.
Wow.
And I had to wake up at like 4 a.m, like before the sun rose. And I remember getting in that basket, shitting my fucking pants. I literally was terrified. And there was a couple that was there that was like standing right behind me. And the boyfriend was like super tall, like 6'3" or something. Like I'm 5'3", and the girlfriend was like in the corner, like perfect spot for the hot air balloon, and I was like right on the edge, so another good spot to be in the hot air balloon. And the boyfriend was like, "Oh, excuse me, like can we switch places so that I can like hold my girlfriend's hand?" And I was like, my people pleaser self was like, I should switch spots with him. And I was like, you know what? No, I'm not gonna see shit. I'm not gonna see anything if I switch spots with this man. And I have spent so much money and time to come be here. And I turned around and I was like, you know what? No, I really like the spot, actually.
Good
like,
for you.
I was like, maybe when we get up there, like, we can switch places and I can take a picture of you guys. And he was like, and I could tell he was annoyed in the moment, but also like, who cares?
No,
like,
dude,
he was
you
up there
spent the
too.
money,
He
yeah.
could literally see over my head.
Yeah,
So
exactly.
it was fine. He got his view. But I felt really proud of myself over the entire duration of the trip just for like stepping outside of my comfort zone. But yeah, I thought that Egyptians were really nice. A lot of people thought I was Egyptian.
Really? Oh, yeah,
Yeah.
I totally see that. From what I haven't been to Egypt since I was like a baby. I'm just basing this off of the Egyptians I know in Canada.
Yeah.
They're very, very nice. Some of them, like, the kindest
Really
people.
kind, welcoming.
But some of them are very pushy.
I think, yeah, like I got scammed at one point, like from a random like souvenir tourist shop, and I like had an actual mental breakdown afterwards because I was like, how did I let this happen to myself? Like, I'm smarter than this. But like, especially when you're in a foreign country by yourself as a woman and you're trying to make the most educated decision, but someone's just being like, really good price, this is a really good price. You're just like, okay, like yeah, sure,
No,
like I
for
think it is,
sure.
and it's a different currency, and they're doing all these conversions on a calculator, and it's really overwhelming. So I think I could have been like a little nicer to myself in that moment. The one thing I did find, like, I ended up meeting a lot of my friends who like had never left Egypt. Like, it was just, you know, the place they've lived their entire life.
Yeah.
It's an Islamic country, and the view of women was behind in terms of where Canada's at, and that's understandable. Like, you know, it's a religious thing. Like, there's a lot that I think like we live in a bubble here in Toronto. Like, not that there aren't people who are like conservative here or
yeah.
you know, like whatever, but I think it's like I wasn't prepared for the way that I think some of the guys talked about women, even the way that some of the girls talked about women, and it talked about birth control and how like IUDs will make you infertile. And I was like, wow, like there is a lot going on here. And to be fair, that was just in that one social circle. Like, there's a lot, I know that there's a lot of like activism that happens in Egypt, and there's Egyptians who are like really like who are distinctly feminist and who are academics and who are extremely progressive. But I think it was just like comparing that to my friend group at home, I was like, wow, like very different way.
Just a completely different world.
Yeah. So that was like interesting for me to also like in a way kind of shut my mouth in certain moments and just know like, okay, this is not my place. This is not my country. This is not my city. These are not my friends. And just to be like, okay, interesting perspective.
Yeah.
Cool. And I'm not good at that because I'm a very opinionated person. So that was tricky at times, but yeah, I had a great time.
I'm glad you enjoyed it. I definitely have to visit soon. I've been working like to work on my Arabic because my Arabic sucks.
Okay.
But I want it to be good enough to the point where I can like hold a conversation. We're getting there. So I think in the next year or two, I'm definitely gonna visit.
It's a really difficult language.
Yeah. I mean, the thing is, I understand it perfectly.
Okay.
So I think that's the hardest part is like if someone's speaking to me, I know exactly what they're saying.
Okay.
Just me speaking back, I sound like a 5-year-old.
Okay, I have one term that I learned that I want to know if you know it.
Okay.
It's kind of like more of like a casual like something people say.
Okay.
My friend Laura, she would always say this when I was there. She'd be like, khalas.
Khalas?
Yeah.
Yeah, like enough. Like
it's done.
Yeah,
like
yeah.
and then I like captured it, and then I just be like, like khalas.
That's amazing. No, you pronounced it well. Yeah.
Thank you.
People struggle with the and the and it's very.
But it's also like I speak Spanish too, so I think like when you have like one accent kind of down, like, and you're not just speaking in this like Canadian English, like how are y'all like vibe, like you know how to like roll your R's and do different things vocally.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Anyways, Mercedes, thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it. I have more questions, so I'll definitely have to have you on again in the future. But anything you want to shout out, your page, Street Sense, anything, do your thing.
Yeah, I mean, for sure, check out Street Sense. It's spelled like CENTS, like the money way of spelling sense. And then my personal Instagram, it's Benzie. I'm actually about to go to the Olympics.
Oh, nice. With CBC, right?
With CBC, yeah, like with their sports department. So while I'm there, I'm planning on doing content every single day because with sports, I'm going to be more behind the camera. So I'm going to be like on my personal account being like day one of like da-da-da at the Olympics. So if you've ever wondered what it's like to work at the Olympics or just like be around in that space, I will be posting about it every day, and I'm like holding myself to that. Like me saying it here is also holding myself accountable too. But yeah, it's Benzie on Instagram, Sadie Benzie on TikTok, and Street Sense everywhere else.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for listening. Thank you, and I will see you guys next week. Peace.